你们要点
可以
都要
了吗？
点开始啊！
开始了吗？
你们都要点开始，你们所有的对 YouTube、Facebook 都要点。
现在还没有直播，现在 practice，OK，就是我们现在只是开始 practice 而已。
哦，好，你们我
OK，OK，we can start.
Okay, Ronnie, go ahead and roll it.
Can we stop here? Can we stop here?
Arches.
Stop. Yeah. Tony, 那个 Ronnie, when you were playing that video, it's got broken screens.
That might just be my internet connection, unfortunately.
Oh, okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure that's something that we can overcome. If not, then it is what it is. Go ahead, continue, please.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Mhm. Yeah, video here.
Artists and entertainers who took part in the most recent forum hosted by the Act Against Hate Alliance, or AAHA, say the industry can help to reduce hate and do it in a positive way. Carly Perloff is a theater director, playwright, author, and educator.
What I think is so powerful about making art is it's not didactic. It doesn't point the finger. It doesn't tell you in the audience that you're wrong or that you're a bad person or that you're stupid. It says, go on this ride with me. Experience this person's life.
The warnings from State Attorney General Rob Bonta that hate crimes are on the rise in California are not lost on Adrian Troala, who is known
Ronnie,
as
just fast forward to almost the end of this clip.
TREW Love, made possible through funding from the California State Library Stop the Hate Initiative. The organization was co-founded by former California State Senate Minority Leader Bob Huff and May Ho Huff.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm former State Senator Bob Huff, and I'm the program's MC. You just watched some highlights of last month's program compiled by Bill Bird, our communications director, with video editing provided by Ronnie Chung, our technical director. Our theme last month was related to the role played by the arts and entertainment industry in reducing hate crime. Today's briefing is the 8th in a series of monthly media briefings hosted by Act Against Hate Alliance. And while we live streamed a press conference earlier this month, this is the first of our media briefings that we are live streaming through YouTube and Facebook. While streaming gives much wider access to our content, we encourage our media audience to continue to register for and log into our Zoom briefings directly, as we'll provide you with a media packet and press release after the program concludes. I'd like to turn the microphone over to my wife, May now, for her opening remarks.
Thank you, Bob. Good morning, everyone. Act Against Hate Alliance was founded in 2022 to focus on finding and implementing solutions to reduce hate crimes. Today, we have assembled a group of diverse religious leaders who will delve into the role that religion plays in reducing hate crimes. Religion has played a significant role in American history and culture since the country's founding. The First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution guarantees freedom of religion, and this right has been upheld by the courts throughout American history. As a result, religious freedom is a core value of American society. Religion has also played a role in shaping American values and beliefs. For example, the Protestant work ethic, which emphasizes hard work and self-reliance, is rooted in Christian values, though many non-Christian people of faith also have these values. Additionally, many of the founding fathers of the United States were religious men who believed that religion was essential to a good society. In our monthly briefings, Act Against Hate Alliance has confirmed the key role education plays in reducing hate crimes and incidents. We often think of education as taking place in a classroom, and it does, but it also occurs both formally and informally in our homes, police academies, media, and as discussed in our program today, religious institutions. Bob, back to you.
Thank you, Mamie. There's no doubt that religion plays an important role in the lives of many Americans. According to blah, 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 blah. Okay, I think we're good. Everything okay?
Also, Dr. Whitehead here.
Yeah, I see that. I'm thinking we ought to go ahead and let them in. Let's see, I'm going to stop this.
All right, I'm going to go in then.
Okay.
Hang on. Dr. Whitehead, I have just unmuted you.
Okay, good morning.
There we go. How are you?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Oh, man, it's been wonderful. I think I said in my notes to you that we're live streaming this for the first time, and it's required a whole different dimension of activity prior to.
Oh,
So,
yes.
yeah.
Are you live streaming on YouTube?
YouTube, and that's the version that we'll send out to you later on, because Ronnie, the guy that normally does that is our tech guy, has to hop in a car immediately afterwards and drive home. He's on the road.
Oh,
So
my.
we hope we have enough bandwidth where he is, and everything will
Hopefully,
come.
it holds steady for at least the hour that we need.
Right.
That's good.
Last 2 nights ago, we were doing a practice run on it, and he kept getting bumped off. So
Oh, my
he has a
goodness.
backup with his cell phone with a different, internet service if we need it. So
Well, that's good that you,
the
but
cell
I like
phone
to
with a
think that
different,
all of those bump outs, that
internet
meant that was
service
all
if
for,
we
you're
need
done.
it.
That
So
happened yesterday.
right,
So
right.
today.
Yeah, we'd like to think that too. Oh man.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm looking forward to this. Let's see.
Yeah.
I think this will be nice.
It's an important subject. We appreciate you coming on and contributing, because certainly you have a pretty broad spectrum that you cover with universities and everything.
Mm-hmm.
I never know how many people are going to show up. We've got 7 on right now, 6 in the waiting room. It's a little bit early. I think we had about 35 or so that had registered prior to this. A lot of them come on at the last minute.
Mm-hmm.
News agencies, as you may know, if there's anything that's more exciting, that they drop you in a heartbeat and go do something else.
Right. Yes.
And the opposite works too. If there's nothing exciting happening, then they'll click in at the last minute. But we have a fair amount of mainstream media that have registered today, so that's good.
Okay, excellent. Not sure, right? Anything can happen. I'm going to just grab some water really quickly.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I think I'm going to get some too. You have water? Okay, let me go check the YouTube and Facebook right now.
Bob, the Venerable Hui Dong is in now.
Okay, great. Ah,
And Lauren just popped in as well.
very good.
Venerable Hui Dong, can you unmute and give a few words so we can check your audio
And video.
and video? Hi, Bob. Dr. Jasser has also joined.
Okay. Yeah, just double check video and audio, and I'll join you back in a moment.
Dr. Jasser, can I have you unmute and say a few words so we can check your audio and your video as well?
Yeah, hi, good morning. This is Zudi Jasser. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. Everything looks good. Venerable Hui Dong, can I have you unmute as well and say a few words to check your audio? Bob stepped away for just a moment. He'll be right.
Oh, okay.
I've checked the audio of Dr. Jasser as well.
You have? Okay. So are all of our speakers, everything working okay?
We are still missing the rabbi, and Hui Dong has still not tested audio yet.
Okay.
Should I disable the waiting room now or?
Go ahead and let everybody in. And
Okay.
we still need to work with the speakers that you haven't confirmed on. So Hui Dong is the only one we haven't got the audio and video checked out on?
That's correct. And the rabbi has not joined yet either.
Okay. Well, stay flexible.
All right, I just disabled the waiting room and let everybody in.
Okay. Dr. Jasser, are you online right now?
Yes, I am.
How do you pronounce your first name?
Zudi.
Zudi. Okay. It's your, it looks like ZUHD on the, on the screen. So I just want to make sure.
Yeah, ZUHD.
Rabbi Horsky has just.
Great. Thank you. Go ahead and run through the traps, Ronnie, if you would.
Rabbi, can I please have you unmute and say a few words so we can check your audio?
Absolutely. Thank you all for inviting me and including me in this endeavor to stamp out a little bit of hate in a world that could use
Yes,
that.
absolutely. Seem to cycle around which group is getting whacked the most, but certainly the Jewish community has had their fair share, unfair share, I should say, recently.
Hate is a course of history. It's a cycle, and it repeats and repeats and repeats.
It is. All right. I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna go quiet a little bit, and then Ronnie will run some video prior to, and then I'll come in and talk and do our little intro, and then we'll get right into the interviews or into your comments, excuse me. So I'll be quiet. Go ahead, Ronnie, take it away.
Recording in progress.
Artists and entertainers who took part in the most recent forum hosted by the Act Against Hate Alliance, or AAHA, say the industry can help to reduce hate and do it in a positive way. Carly Perloff is a theater director, playwright, author, and educator.
What I think is so powerful about making art is it's not didactic. It doesn't point the finger. It doesn't tell you in the audience that you're wrong or that you're a bad person or that you're stupid. It says, go on this ride with me. Experience this person's life.
The warnings from State Attorney General Rob Bonta that hate crimes are on the rise in California are not lost on Adrian Trewalla, who is known as the artist called True, T-R-E-W, Love.
We live in a culture of powerlessness. We're perpetually told we're not beautiful enough.
we're not, light enough, we're not blonde enough, we're not skinny enough, we're not smart enough, we're not rich enough. And so these stories all compile into this really intense emotional block that prevents us from feeling compassion for other people.
There are other artists and entertainers who believe that media can play a role to call attention to hate crimes and hopefully reduce them. Faith Bautista uses the weapon she helped to create, Chime Television.
We're not accepted at Harvard, we're not accepted at Yale, we're not accepted in UC State, UC, because there's too much of us. And do we punish those that spend thousands of hours to study to get an average of 3.5 or 4.0? They will not be accepted because they're Asian? I really have a problem with that.
The way to confront hate crimes and reduce them is to learn, once again, how to live together as Californians and Americans first. Carlos Benitez is a recognized art dealer and collector. He grew up in Los Angeles and remembers that the experience was one of inclusiveness.
I grew up in LA in a very multicultural city. I went to schools that are very multicultural. So thank God for that. I always felt comfortable, being around the different groups, different nationalities.
The core mission of the Act Against Hate Alliance is to identify the root causes behind hate crimes and propose solutions to stop them. It is made possible through funding from the California State Library's Stop the Hate initiative. The organization was co-founded by former California State Senate Minority Leader Bob Huff and May Ho Huff.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm former State Senator Bob Huff, and I am the program's MC. You just watched some highlights of last month's program compiled by Bill Bird, our communications director, with video editing provided by Ronnie Chung, our technical director. Our theme last month was related to the role played by the arts and entertainment industry in reducing hate crime. Today's briefing is the 8th in a series of monthly briefings hosted by Act Against Hate Alliance, and while we live streamed a press conference earlier this month, this is the first of our media briefings that we're live streaming through YouTube and Facebook. While streaming gives much wider audience, or access to audience anyway, to our content, we encourage our media audience to continue to register for and log into our Zoom briefings directly, as we will provide to you our media packet and press release after the program concludes. I'd like to turn the microphone over now to my wife, May for her opening remarks. May?
Thank you, Bob. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending our briefing today, and thank you for your continued support. Act Against Hate Alliance was founded in 2022 to focus on finding and implementing solutions to reduce hate crimes. Today, we have assembled a group of diverse religious leaders who will delve into the role that religion plays in reducing hate crimes. Religion has played a significant role in American history and culture since the country's founding. The First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution guarantees freedom of religion, and this right has been upheld by the courts throughout American history. As a result, religious freedom is a core value of American society. Religion has also played a role in shaping American values and beliefs. For example, the Protestant work ethic, which emphasizes hard work and self-reliance, is rooted in Christian values, though many non-Christian people of faith also have these values. Additionally, many of the founding fathers of the United States were religious men who believed that religion was essential to a good society. In our monthly briefings, Act Against Hate Alliance has confirmed the key role education plays in reducing hate crimes and incidents. We often think of education as taking place in a classroom, and it does, but it also occurs both formally and informally in our homes, police academies, media, and as discussed in our program today, religious institutions. Bob, back to you.
Thank you, May. There's no doubt that religion plays an important role in the lives of many Americans. According to Wikipedia's sources, 26% of adult population identify as having no religious affiliation. That's a growing trend. But about 2/3 of Americans identify as Christian, with non-Christian religions, including Islam, Judaism, Buddhism, Hinduism, and others, making up about 6% of the population. Just within the past week, the city of Minneapolis became the first U.S. city to allow the Islamic call to prayer to be broadcast over speakers 5 times per day, year-round, a testimony to the growing population of Muslims in that city, as well as our nation's religious freedoms. Religion has helped to shape American values and beliefs, politics, social and community support, culture, art, music education, and healthcare, to name a few. While the role of religion in American society is constantly evolving, it's clear that religion continues to play a significant role in the development of the United States, and we look forward to hearing the perspectives from today's speakers. To our media friends, please log your name, organization, and email address in the chat so we can send you follow-up material related to this meeting. You can post any questions you have in the chat, and time permitting, we'll pose them to our panelists. Please address any chat you post to everyone, not specifically to me or Maymay. We're honored to have Dr. Dawn Michelle Whitehead, Vice President of the Office of Global Citizenship for Campus, Community, and Careers at the American Association of Colleges and Universities, AACU, who is also the co-director of the Interfaith Leadership in Higher Education Initiative. Whitehead's work focuses on advancing equity-focused practices and strategies to integrate global, experiential, community-engaged, and interfaith learning across curricular and co-curricular initiatives, general education and the majors, within professional schools, and on-campus and off-campus experiences. She's presented nationally and internationally and has written on global learning, community-based learning, civic engagement, integrative learning, and interfaith cooperation. Whitehead was named an inaugural member of the Institute for International Education's National Academy for International Education and serves as a board member for the Forum on Education Abroad. Whitehead earned her PhD at Indiana University, Bloomington, in education policy, studies with a doctoral minor in international and comparative education, and a concentration in African studies. Wow, that's quite a mouthful, but you have certainly earned all of those accolades. Welcome, Dr. Whitehead, to the program.
Thank you so much for having me today. I'm really honored to be a part of this discussion and to share a perspective from higher education on this work. And, I think right now, one of the things that we are asked to do repeatedly in higher education is to show the value of higher education. People are questioning, is it worth it? Is it not worth it? And one of the reasons is because we've gone a little bit away from sharing how what we're doing in higher education is actually improving society. And that's one of the original purposes of higher education, was to improve society. And in many cases, it's easy to see how research can improve society, but it's less easy to see how our practice can also positively impact students and broader society, particularly a pluralistic society as what we live in. In a book called What Universities Owe Democracy, Ron Daniels, the president of Johns Hopkins University, called for purposeful pluralism. And what that is, he said, purposeful pluralism is a cluster of activities to deliberately design campuses with an eye to engagement and dialogue. He argues that universities are that one rare place where students come together with people from different backgrounds, different experiences, and they can't get away from it, or they shouldn't be allowed to get away from it, because you are living and working with people who are quite different. And he argues that it is our job to make sure that students come together across these differences while they're in higher education. Well, one of the things that we've seen, and that many of you may have seen, is that we often see students coming together in intentional activities across diversity when we're talking about race, ethnicity, gender, but we don't always include religion. And what we argue from the perspective of the work that we've been doing with our colleagues at Interfaith America is that religion and faith tradition, or not practicing a faith tradition, should be a part of these initiatives that we're considering when we're talking about diversity and we're talking about student engagement. And over the past 6 years, we've been partnering, as was already said, with Interfaith America to look at ways that we can help students and prepare them for interfaith cooperation and interfaith engagement. And in that work, one of the first things we do is we talk about the concept of worldview. Worldview, which of course is a person's religious, spiritual, or non-religious outlook on life. It could be based on particular religious traditions or spiritual practices, or non-religious perspectives, but it's that foundational outlook that an individual has on life to help make sense of the world. And our goal in our work, not just for our projects, but for society, is to really see ourselves in a world where people of differing worldviews and religions can live together in peace and maintain their distinctiveness. That, of course, is religious pluralism. And we're focused on working toward proactive engagement of students to a positive end, which contributes to ending hate among groups. And we do this through the concept of interfaith cooperation or worldview engagement. And interfaith cooperation is rooted by cultivating a respect for worldview identity, mutually inspiring relationships between people of different worldviews around shared values, which is the key. As was already stated, in the United States, we can no longer ignore worldview or religious diversity. And I've heard some say that the United States may be one of the most religiously diverse countries, but we may also be one of the most religiously illiterate. And this is something that we must acknowledge and offer our students meaningful, intentional opportunities to learn and engage from each other across religious differences as well as others. And to do this, we must create an opportunity in a space where students can understand and gain knowledge about different faith practices and traditions, understanding why some people may not practice faith or traditions. And relationship building is the key to developing these skills that are associated with interfaith cooperation. One of our colleagues, who is the president of Interfaith America, has a wonderful book called Interfaith Leadership, and it's really practical and helpful for those inside and outside higher education. And he argues that there are 5 key skills for interfaith leadership that are instructive, I think, in our work to combat hate crimes. I'd like to share just 3 of these skills and a few strategies that we've seen help prepare students for greater interfaith understanding and cooperation, which should help us get to that goal of moving past the violence and the hate and understanding more about each other. One of the first is building relationships and mobilizing religiously diverse constituents. And I think we'll hear this later from some of the other presenters, but how are we building relationships across religious lines? How are we building relationships and establishing partnerships and dialogues with groups who believe similarly and differently from us? One of the things that we've learned from our campus partners is that the time to do this work is now. It isn't that we shouldn't wait until there's a crisis to come together across these lines. And a wonderful example occurred out of tragedy with a number of institutions that we work with in Pittsburgh. And after the Tree of Life shooting, when 11 lives were lost, one thing that happened at a couple of our campuses was that the Muslim students immediately mobilized to support their Jewish colleagues. And this came about, again, because they had been working together for years across these lines. And so they immediately came in and said, what can we do? What can we do to help? How can we come along inside you? And it's so critical that you're able to build these relationships of trust before there's conflict. The second thing is creating interfaith activities. These are activities that bring people together across religious differences. So you're having opportunities to engage with people who approach the world differently, and they may have a different orientation and foundation. But the key is coming up with the right activities. Sometimes people want to jump in with some of the heavy challenges, and that's not the best way to go about creating a community and a sense of camaraderie across lines. One thing that we've seen that's been effective with institutions is coming together around activities where there's a shared objective. That objective could be understanding. It could be coming together around a service project. And in the aftermath of that service project, having a conversation about what your faith tradition or the tradition that you practice had to do with this activity. Why was it that from your religious community or non-religious community that this was something important that you wanted to do? And then finally, the other goal is facilitating dialogue. And again, not starting with dialogue around the areas of theology that some people aren't prepared to debate or discuss, but can you have dialogue around other issues? When you are mobilizing in the aftermath of a disaster, can you talk about the stories that you share among your groups? Why is it that you were compelled to do this activity? What from your tradition inspired you to participate? And students can hear commonalities among others. The last thing I want to share is a bit of data that we found in some of the work from our colleagues at Interfaith America have done on a study called Ideals. It's the Interfaith Diversity Experiences and Attitude Longitudinal Survey. And over 122 colleges and universities across America were surveyed in this issue. And one of the things they reported is that students reported low levels of involvement in programs and activities that build on interfaith skills. Only 38% attended a religious service or tradition that wasn't their own. Only 26% enrolled in a religion course on campus. 14% participated in interfaith dialogue. 11% participated in an interfaith action like hunger or poverty. And 9% participated in interfaith or religious diversity training. And what we found and what they have found over the years of doing this work is that it's important that institutions demonstrate a commitment to interfaith understanding as an important part of higher education. This message can be sent broadly in terms of the dedicated spaces we have on campus for interfaith cooperation, as well as spaces that we have for particular religious practices that need to be there. One last example I'll share is one of our universities that participated with us. They reimagined the way they set up their food service, where they started to look at what are some foods that should not be, that are not permittable among certain faith traditions. And they started preparing things differently, putting them in spaces where it was clear. And they provided language to say, we are doing this because we are welcoming all members of our community and we're not going to prioritize certain groups. The final note I'd like to say is that we can combat hate when we are preparing students to engage and learn with and from each other. And I think higher education has a lot to contribute to this. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Whitehead. I appreciate your comments. Our next presenter is Rabbi Sarah Hronsky, President Chair of the LA Council of Religious Leaders, as well as President of the Board of Rabbis of Southern California. With a deep dedication to Jewish faith and culture, Rabbi Hronsky, or Rabbi Sarah, actually, as she is called, enthusiastically embraces her role as senior rabbi for Temple Beth Hillel. Rabbi Sarah joined Temple Beth Hillel in July 2003, following her ordination at Hebrew Union College, Jewish Institute of Religion of LA. While at HUC, she earned 2 master's degrees, one in Hebrew letters and the other in Jewish communal service. A major focus of her rabbinic studies was the Jewish tradition's view of persons with disabilities. She grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, where her family was very active in a small congregation. She holds an undergraduate degree from the University of Missouri, Columbia, with a Bachelor of Science in Secondary Education. Thank you, Rabbi Sarah, was that it, for joining us today.
Yeah, Sarah is much easier than Hronsky, I must say. Thank you for including me in this amazing group of individuals to share a little bit about the role of religion in combating hate. So you may note that yesterday was Yom HaShoah, and a day that we observed as a Jewish people to remember those who perished in the Holocaust. We know that millennials, 1 in 10 have heard the word Holocaust. Of those that have heard it, they guess maybe 2 million souls perished or were murdered. There is a lack of knowledge, and we may be reaching the very end of sort of very odd term, almost like the golden age of the awareness and just the true depth of pain, of suffering that occurred during the Holocaust as the witnesses are dying. And so the memory is beginning to fade. It's not a time to close the doors on what it means to spew words of hate that turn into a genocide of a peoplehood. We also just celebrated as a people the holiday of Passover, where we learn about really the first time a group becoming oppressed. Said our texts teach us that a new Pharaoh rose who did not know Joseph, and he did not know Joseph's people, and feared them and oppressed them and enslaved them. Now, this time was not a genocide, as we would see later in history, but this was oppressing a people because they were different. In this case, they observed a religion that was not similar to that of the Egyptians. This is a narrative that repeats all too often. Out of a place of ignorance comes fear and hate. And when those fear and hate get so large, we see action that results in devastating consequences, much of which actually, when Dawn was presenting, she shared some of these results. There is so much benefit to not just stand on one's religious pulpit to beat one's theology, but rather to go to the essence and find the bridges and the connections between these religious groups so we can stand united against all hate, all isms. We as the Jewish people are taught that we are created in God's image, meaning every human being was created in the image of God, deserving respect. It doesn't say if you have this skin color or if you have this religion. Every human being was created in God's image, deserving the same level of respect and treated with that care. So much so that we're also taught we're created from one human being. Now, whether we believe scientifically this is possible or not is not as relevant as the notion of what it teaches us. If we descend from one human being, no one can say that my father was greater than your father. My mother was greater than your mother. My background doesn't matter because we stand equally with one another. If we come from this space and we get ourselves motivated and charged with other lessons, like to love your neighbor like yourself, we learn that in Leviticus, but a few verses later, it says, love the stranger like yourself. What does that mean? How do we treat one another? We treat the other person the way we would want to be treated. Again, it doesn't matter if it's somebody you know, doesn't matter if it's your friend, doesn't matter if it's a stranger. We're told over and over and over again to protect the stranger, for you were once a stranger. We have all been othered. It matters not what your background is. You have at some time in your life been othered for another reason. You have been marginalized. We know what it means to stand on someone's shoes. And so this work of interfaith means to find those commonalities, those spaces, and to step up and do the hard work of standing up when someone is hurting or someone is being treated differently, when someone is a victim of hate crime, hate rhetoric. We'll also say that the unique hat that we may wear is that we are very familiar as a Jewish people of what it means to be the victim of like hate speech and how it can erupt and explode. And we're taught as well that Lashon Hara, the evil tongue, is one of the things we have to fight the hardest against. Spreading rumors, spreading narratives that may not be true narratives. We actually, so much our text teaches us that there's two guards against this. We have our teeth and our lips. So we should seal them unless and only speak when it is to be very cautious in our speaking pattern. How's that? If you're going to break both of these seals, you need to be very careful with the words that you share, because words can harm and words can affect. Now, the bonus is words can also bring us together. When one of our fellows are hurting, we stand up side by side with them. And so I was thinking, what is the role of religion in combating hate? When someone is being a victim of hate, we physically stand with them. We will go and rally. It doesn't have to be a Jew that was harmed. It can be anybody that was harmed. We will go to a rally. We will stand up. We will step forward. What do? I teach the kids that I work with in my synagogue, Temple Beth Hillel, how to identify hate, how to guard their tongue from spreading inappropriate messages, how to report incidences of hate, how to keep their finger on that they don't forget or dismiss. So a couple examples, we've had folks say to me, oh, Rabbi Sarah, somebody dropped a text, basically dropped a picture to me on my phone of a Nazi image. And I'll say to them, how did it make you feel? And we'll work through that. Then I'll say, now, what did you do with that? Did you report it? Who did you tell? What was the next steps? When a local Catholic high school called me and said our soccer team were sending around some pretty disgusting messages in this huge WhatsApp group, should we suspend them? What do we do? And so I said, thank you. Thank you for asking. What's the right way to remedy to this? How do we not just suspend, but teach and grow and learn? So maybe it's me taking a visit to the school and talking about where these origins of some of these images and texts that they were sharing, where those words come from. And maybe it's visiting the Museum of Tolerance and talking about what it means to be intolerance. So as a faith leader, I get invited to participate in people's lives. I get invited in local schools. Just last week, I went to Campbell Hall. and which is an Episcopal school, and they said, could you talk to our high school students about what it means to celebrate and observe Passover? And so it was just a few minutes of their chapel time, but it was a good time together. And at the end, I said, it feels like you have a lot of Jewish students here. And they said, maybe 1/3 of our population, which is like phenomenal in my brain cells. But the fact is that 2/3 of their school of different faith backgrounds, or however many it really is, we're hearing this united message of why do we talk about oppression? Why do we talk about what it means to be pushed lower, to have your voices shuttered? And we talked about where it applies in modernity, who are current victims of oppression, who needs their voices lifted louder, who needs redemption in this time. And so here I am with a bunch of high school students last week, continuing this interfaith dialogue. In addition, I was invited to a local public school where I met with their steering committee of their new, they have a new Jewish club founded by students. It was beautiful. The steering committee has 1 Jewish kid and 3 non-Jewish kids. Fascinating that they founded this Jewish club together and are running this experience to work through and talk about why Jews observe this holiday or that holiday. What does it mean? And so I got this great opportunity to spend time with them and help them shape what they're going to do for the rest of the year together. We teach how to, just looking at my notes, what else do you need from me? Report crimes, working with the Department of Homeland Security on what it means to reduce hate, really focusing a lot on youth because that's where we stop that ignorance young. But I just had a meeting with some folks from the Department of Homeland Security, 2 folks from the White House, to talk about hate in LA specifically and how we combat it, which is mostly bringing people together in conversation and dialogue, as Don said, in times that are calm, not just in times that are raging. Partnering with our Jewish Federation to increase this message. You may have seen some billboards around Los Angeles that speak specifically to anti-hate rhetoric. We love just pushing hate down. So there's billboards all around this community to lift that message up. We meet with different leadership that are in office. And so I have a group of Los Angeles Council of Religious Leaders who are meeting next week with Mayor Bass's office to talk about continued partnership. So here we are all going to sit together at the table. I am one voice. Yes, I wear a Jewish hat, but everyone else around that table is representing all different faiths. And we will sit with key leadership in our city to talk about what it means to serve in partnership and to push down hate as a part of this and to lift up our brothers and sisters. And with Supervisor Mitchell's office and the Jewish Federation, we hosted an interfaith Seder. Goodness, it's been a busy season. About a week ago, I can't remember anymore, was able to be a leader of the Seder where we had specialists at every table to not just walk through the Seder, but to have informed and led discussion and building these bridges and connections on understanding each other's personal narrative. And so here were facilitated, thoughtful conversations with members all around this community, mostly interfaith, variety of backgrounds, but that everyone's narrative at that table mattered, even though we were doing it, walking through the pattern of a Seder for Passover. So there's all of these opportunities that religious leaders have, these pulpits where they get to speak from. They have these opportunities to reach further into the community, whether it's in schools. They have the individuals that they work with directly, like in my synagogue, where I can speak freely from my pulpit and share and increase. And our biggest impact is to constantly be aware that the words that we speak matter. They have to be guarded and protected. If we say something about another group, it could be heard and lead to an action that is not positive. If we say we can increase hate, we can. We have that power. But we also have the power to squash hate with love through dialogue, communication, building bridges, and recognizing the power that exists with the words of our mouth. And that includes the words that we so easily share on social media. which is a whole other topic that I have to spend a lot of times talking to our teens about, because that is where a lot of the hate they see happens to their social media accounts. Another topic for another day, but hopefully that helps a little bit to understand. I wear a lot of different hats in this community, but the hat that perhaps is most important is to build those bridges and to recognize how we are collectively much more united than we are different.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Sarah, for your very timely comments. Our next panelist is Dr. Mohammed Zuhdi Jasser, President and founder of American Islamic Forum for Democracy. Dr. Jasser is an American religious and political commentator, a medical doctor specializing in internal medicine and nuclear cardiology in Phoenix, Arizona. Jasser is a former lieutenant commander in the United States Navy, where he served as staff internist in the Office of the Attending Physician of the United States Congress. In 2003, with a group of American Muslims, Jasser founded the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, based in Phoenix, Arizona. And in 2004, he was one of the founders of the Center for Islamic Pluralism. He's also a contributor to national and international media, where he has advocated separation of mosque and state and spoken against the ideology of political Islam or Islamism. He's been a frequent guest on conservative outlets like Fox News, Newsmax TV, and Blaze Media. He's also appeared on CNN, MSNBC, and CBS a couple of times and contributed articles to nationally read newspapers such as the Arizona Republic, the Dallas Morning News, the New York Post, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Times. In March 2012, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell appointed Jasser to serve a 2-year term on the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom. Welcome, Dr. Jasser.
Thank you. Thank you. It's an honor to be with all of you, and I want to thank the Act Against Hate Alliance for putting this together and inviting us. In this holy month of Ramadan, we're just now on our last 2 days of Ramadan and our fast, and all of the major religions have some form of fasting, self-reflection, atonement that is part of our understanding of what is the greatest things that equalize us as human beings, whether it's hunger, thirst, or deprivation of whatever the blessings that we have. And I think we should be reminded that it's about bettering ourselves. It's about looking internally and externally. And after 9/11, many of us in the Muslim community, which is a very diverse community, I think we have to be careful. My first sort of takeaway is to remind folks that when we talk about our faith communities, it's easy to, especially in a country as diverse as America, to lump them into one group. But within our communities, we have a vast spectrum of diverse faith interpretations. And, our mission has been to look beyond ethnicity, look beyond sort of skin deep definitions of what it is to be Muslim, but to look at ideological diversity, which, if you look at a quarter of the world's population is Muslim. And yet, with the 56 countries that are Muslim majority, we are able to practice our faith more freely here in America than we can in any other Muslim majority country. We learned here in Arizona, right, a few days after 9/11, Balbir Singh was assassinated in a hate crime from the Sikh community. And we realized that, when hate exists, it's often done lashing out at the other, as many of the speakers before me have talked about. And we need to unite together. And as I learned in the Navy, much like threads, when you put 9 or 10 threads together, one of the SEAL mottos is that when you wrap them together and intertwine them, they're much stronger than they are singly by themselves. And I've testified to Congress on what are the root causes of Muslim radicalization and the responsibility of our communities. And in my book, A Battle for the Soul of Islam, I talked about what I think is our role in the Muslim community to combat radicalization. And as the rabbi was talking about Yom HaShoah and the remembrance of Holocaust horrific crimes against humanity that occurred in the 20th century, we're reminded that many of the leaders of Muslim majority countries deny the existence of the Holocaust. They're in Holocaust denial. The anti-Semitism rates, as through the State Department studies, have been upwards of 95 to 98% from countries from Lebanon to Egypt to Pakistan and elsewhere because of the indoctrination that exists in many of these media. So, I think one of the best ways, and I tell our Muslim communities this, for us to, yes, certainly there is a lot of anti-Muslim bigotry that needs to be combated, But I think one of the best ways for us to do that is to embody, is to demonstrate what genuine reform within our communities is in combating faith-based hate that might exist within our community against the Jewish community, against Western society, which is often demonized as secular, as hedonistic and other things, in which they divide the world into Islamic faith communities or non-Muslim communities, and a lot of the radicalization is based in a demonization of the other. And I think if we can embody these things, I was giving a speaking tour in Australia in early 2019, and was actually in Australia when the 2 mosques in New Zealand were attacked by a terrorist who killed over 50 Muslims in an act of hate and an act of anti-immigration. And I, at the time, was speaking about how much in America I think we have the best inoculation, if you will, against these types of hate, because we are a country not based in a particular national ethnic heritage, but based in an idea of the American dream, which is, and this is the crux of our work, which is we fight against political Islam, which we see as theocracy, and say that the best solution is Americanism, which is an idea rooted in the fact that everyone can be an American based on that social contract of believing in a common idea of what it means to be an American, based on that first liberty of religious freedom. I don't use the term Islamophobia. I would ask people not to use that term, because Islam is an idea. And our Muslim Reform Movement organization, you can see it at muslimreformmovement.org. We have a statement at the top. It says, ideas don't have rights, human beings do. So certainly anti-Muslim bigotry exists, but the term Islamophobia actually rooted from oppressors and tyrants like the royal family of Saudi Arabia, like the Iranian theocrats, who basically put people in prison for ideas of conscience and politics of conscience, and call them Islamophobes because they violate their interpretation of Islam. So I think that's an important thing. We have formed the Muslim Reform Movement, and I'd ask you to look. We have a declaration at our website, which is 3 pages of a declaration that we put together that we think are the principles that embody and underpin not only great nations like the US, but Western nations of secular liberal democracies that have a uniting ideology that's based in 3 areas of peace, human rights, and secular governance. And we basically have 12 principles there that we say, we as Muslims, through the inspiration of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and other ideas, believe that these social contracts are necessary in order for us to be able to pietistically practice our own faith, and yet not impose our ideas upon others. And I think to that end, our Muslim Reform Movement now is working in a larger coalition called the Clarity Coalition, and that Clarity stands for Champions for Liberty Against Radical Islamist Tyranny. And we basically worked to develop and pattern how we, as Muslim leaders in Europe and Denmark, Germany, England, Canada, and the US, have come together to basically embody how we can fight against some of the ideas that have radicalized our own community and turned an idea which might be positive for Muslims, which is jihad, and turned it into armed militancy, for example, and used it as a weapon of hate. And ultimately, I would ask in the interfaith idea that yes, interfaith is about commonalities, but real honest interfaith is about actually embracing differences. It's easy to talk about commonalities, but when I as a Muslim can say why I've chosen Islam and I've rejected other faiths, it's obvious. I think it's platitudes and almost insulting not to talk about why you reject other faiths and be able to do that, because there is an act of rejection every time we make an active choice. So it's not painful to do that, and I think we need some tough love, if you will. And sometimes I think our communities, and I speak of this as a Muslim, suffer from a bigotry of low expectations, in which we don't want to offend anybody. We were treading on such thin ice that lack of offense ends up creating a bigotry of low expectations, and there's no maturity happening when it comes to embracing what real interfaith work is all about. And I think we, as much as Muslims are barely 1.5% of the population in America, we have a unique opportunity to do things that, if I was saying what I just did now, in Saudi Arabia or in Syria, where my family's from, in Syria, my half-life would be about 3 weeks, and I would not exist. So, at the end of the day, we can do things in this laboratory in an interfaith way through tough love that we cannot do in any other country. And I think it's a shame that, for example, the work against misogyny that exists across many Muslim majority countries, and so few Americans know about what's happening in Iran right now with the women's movements and other hate that exists in that country by their government against their own people, and especially women. The fact that we're not talking about it and embracing and empowering Muslim women in the United States to stand up for their rights across the planet is, I think, something that we should work harder to do. So in the end, I want to quote Thomas Jefferson, one of our founding fathers, who said that if the freedom of religion guaranteed to us by law and theory can ever rise in practice under the overbearing inquisition of public opinion, truth will prevail over fanaticism, and genuine doctrines of Jesus, so long perverted by his pseudo-priests, will again be restored to their original purity. This reformation will advance with the other improvements of the human mind. So I will tell you, as somebody who's embraced Muslim reforms within our community and outside are necessary to bring us closer to these principles, just as the Christian community looked at its own reform after 1700 plus years and brought forth the great nation of the United States. I think many of, within the Muslim community, we're at barely 1445 years. And I think we're at that same process now with reform. And I think interfaith love can help us bring that forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jasser, for joining our panel today. Our final speaker is the Venerable Hui Dong, Abbot of Fo Guangshan Shilai Temple in Hacienda Heights, a suburb of LA, for those of you who may not be familiar with it. And he's also the Deputy Secretary General of the Buddha's Light International Association, North America Western Region. He also serves on the Board of Trustees of University of the West in California. Abbot Hui Dong, thank you for joining us today.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to this briefing. I also like to thank AAHA for organizing this briefing to combat hate crimes. Meanwhile, I'm inspired and humbled by the insights shared by other faith leaders. And today, I would like to share my vision and thoughts regarding hate crimes. I'm going to have a PPT to share. I'm going to share my thoughts regarding hate crimes, their possible causes and conditions, and possible solutions to address this social issue. I know it's not easy, but at least I want to think and talk about it from the Buddhist perspective. In Buddhism, we look at things from recognizing and understanding what the problem is, finding their causes and conditions, and ways that lead to cessation of the problem. It is true that nowadays we hear more and more often from the news about hate crimes against Asians and other minorities, seniors and other vulnerable and disadvantaged groups of people. There were verbal insults and even physical attacks against them. Hate crimes are just like any other phenomenon, have its causes and conditions. The cause of a social behavior comes from people's minds. There have to be hate, anxiety, worries, and other dissatisfactory and negative mental states within those who committed hate crimes. Therefore, criminals of hate crimes are also victims of their own hatred and hateful behaviors. Before they project hatred to others with their verbal and physical attacks, they suffer the hate inside of themselves by brewing those thoughts and negative emotions in their own minds. In other words, their hateful thoughts and emotions attack their own minds first, then extend the attacks to other people. The cause of these hateful mental states are complex. They might come from the anger or despair from losing a job, conflicts with other people at work or within family, or stresses from health issues, social events, or even from being a victim of other hate crimes. With these negative mental states, if the persons are adequately helped and guided by health professionals or social and religious workers, they could find ways to overcome those stresses. On the other hand, however, if they cannot find sources to guide them release those stress, instead being wrongfully influenced by hateful speeches and violence throughout the media nowadays, they could choose to release their stress by following the hateful behaviors they received from the media. Unfortunately, nowadays, it is not that easy for people to find professionals to guide them, but overwhelmed by violence and hateful speeches and influences in media and from the environment. With rising of this type of causes and conditions, it is not surprising to see the rising of hate crimes. Once the hate crimes are committed and even become a social trend, it is either too late or simply not effective to rely on the police or judicial system to correct the actions and trend. The best way to solve the problem is to correct it from its root. That is to seize the causes of hate in people's minds and change the conditions by switching the hateful media atmosphere to a moral and kind media and educational environment. It is true that no one can guarantee that they will never have stress, for everyone would face challenges in life and become stressful sometimes. However, properly recognizing and understanding the stressful mental states, learning how to deal with or even peacefully live with them is not only a helpful skill to manage, but also a way to give rise to wisdom in Buddhist or other religious practices. Practicing patience in challenging situations, cultivating loving kindness and compassion by helping others and volunteering in the communities, learning and understanding the importance of disciplines and responsibilities rather than focusing too much on personal freedom. And cultivating inner peace through spiritual education can help people learn how to face adversities in life. At the beginning of each year, Shilai Temple conducts the prayer for world peace ceremony joined by religious leaders from different faiths. People from diverse backgrounds come to various cultural events, such as the Lunar New Year celebration, Under the Moon event. These cultural events bridge people from different ethnic and religious backgrounds together. Earlier, other faith leaders talked about the relationships, cultivated relationships. I think this is a good example of that. Activities such as planting trees or cleaning beach remind people to care more about others and our environment. And these events are also joined by faith leaders in Los Angeles area. We are living in a chaotic era. There are conflicts in life, wars between nations, and clashes between ideologies. A good way to stop hateful behaviors and to have happiness and peace in life is not from conquering others, but through respect, love, and mutual understanding. That is my sharing today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Venerable Hui Dong, for joining our panel today. This is the time we go to Q&A. We have about 9 minutes left that we can do it. If we stretch a little bit beyond, I think it's possible to go beyond, but we like to be crisp. I see one question for Rabbi Sarah from Sunita that says, year after year, anti-Semitic activity continues to be at the top of the FBI's Uniform Crime Report, ahead of Muslims, African Americans, and other ethnicities. Could you please discuss why Jewish people are so often the targets of hate crime?
When you have been hated for 2,800 years, the rhetoric and the false repeated lies, that's what happens over and over again. So, right, it starts with the narrative of our exodus from Egypt, and we were othered. It's really hard when you have no space to call your own and you're constantly moving from country to country, being pushed, and not often in areas of being able to be landowners, to be established. And when Jews do establish, like there's a community that established in China where nobody else would settle, then it becomes a beacon for another group and move in and pushed out every Jew. And what happens is when people start sharing hate speech and rhetoric, it is repeated and repeated and repeated. Today, people are still sharing things that we know to be false, right? When folks talk about how many Jews there are around them and taking over the world, we have a beautiful Latinx community in the state of California. There are more individuals who identify as Latinx or Hispanic in the state of California than there are Jews in the entire world. How is it then possible that Jews are running everything and in ownership of everything? It's not possible. There are so many false notions and narratives that get repeated. I grew up in Missouri. I had pennies thrown at me, people asking me about my horns. We know we don't have horns, and yet it's still ignorance that is bred from a very, very young age, and lies that are repeated, and they become truth. And that is our job, to stand up against it. And so when a group has been hated for so long, and you see that pattern repeat and repeat, it is it's challenging. It's a very challenging space to be in. And you thought after the Holocaust that never again would be a possibility. And we're literally in the midst of seeing the quite opposite of that, especially if you've been in the LA community in the last many, many, many months. So I went into a grocery store, came out, and someone had painted a swastika on the ground next to my car in November. I was in there for like 15 minutes. And so when it's always been there. That underlying hate is sort of lying in our sewers. And when the sewer caps can be taken off, it can erupt. And we're sort of at that precipice right now where it's erupting again. It never went away. It's always been there. And yet sometimes it just needs the opening or the crack, allowing it to come up and spring forward.
Thank you, Rabbi Sarah. Certainly that is the motivation for us to start this organization. We're trying to do something to identify and to the causes of hate, but more beyond that, coming to the solutions. And we don't need to have generations and generations and generations of hate. We'd really like to see it go the other direction. I see another question. Dr. Whitehead, are you collecting metrics that demonstrate the impact, the effectiveness of your programs, and have students been generally open and embracing of them?
Okay, thank you for that question. So the answer is yes, but it's not data that we're collecting across all the groups. So particularly with the Interfaith and Higher Education Project, we've got about 50 institutions that are part of this cohort or this network, and they have structured their interfaith programs differently. So we're able to collect data, but some, I think we have only about maybe a third of the institutions are public. The rest are private. Some of them have integrated the interfaith work across the institution. Others, they're doing their work in co-curricular programming with students that opt in. So we've collected data, but we don't have unified data where we say everyone is doing a program that we can see the benefit all over campus. What we are finding, of course, in the ones where the students opt in, they think it's great. The area where we're seeing the most growth is to find greater integration of interfaith cooperation in institutional initiatives on inclusion. And so are we seeing any growth in those areas? So I would say there's it depends answer on that. It depends on the institutional context and climate. That's one of the things about our work is we tend to engage a wide range of institutions. So we do see some promising signs, but we're trying to get to the point where we would have something that's consistent across all of them.
Thank you, Dr. Whitehead. And there's a question for Dr. Jasser in the chat also. Have you received strong unified support for your position from the different groups of Muslims, or has it been a challenge to gain such support?
Well, as a doctor, I'm constantly looking at the cup half full. So I think that we've been getting a lot more support than we thought we would. But the bottom line is we're taking on the establishment within our communities. And that includes the vast majority of folks who lead the mosques and most of the Islamic establishment around the world when we're talking about reform and new interpretations of classical texts that large governments have pushed out. But the vast majority of the alphabet soup of Muslim organizations in America are part of sort of the legacy groups of Muslim Brotherhood ideology. I would ask you to look at a debate I had with Salam Mariotti, the head of the Muslim Public Affairs Council. It's on YouTube. We debated for 2 hours with the World Affairs Council about whether Muslim reform is necessary. His position was no, and it's not necessary. My position was absolutely. And you'll see, I think and that's supposedly one of the more moderate groups, let alone, some of the more entrenched clerical-based groups. Bottom line is there's a lot of denial, there's obfuscation, there's a sense that in America, since we're a 1% minority, we don't have to address these things. But at the end of the day, the fact that women are not on any boards of any mosques, the fact that the Quran's interpretation that says do not take a Jew or a Christian as a friend is there. I don't believe that's what the Quran says. I don't think that's the translation. But the fact that they're denying the need to start creating new books interpretations, not to replace the Quran, but to replace the interpretations and the translations that exist in most of the mosques in order to do away with the hate. So the bottom line is, yes, it's been beyond challenging, and we need interfaith support to get that done, because many within our own faith community sort of are more in a sense that, well, we're embattled right now and we need to circle the wagons and not deal with these things. And I would say that that's the best way to melt away bigotry, is to educate the folks that we are the greatest asset against the hate from within, and that if they can't enable us, they will never be able to have not only national security, but live up to the beauty that is American freedom.
Thank you, Dr. Jasser. And I want to thank all of the speakers today. We're up against the hour, so I'm going to wrap up. We appreciate you participating, your breadth of experience, and the things you're engaged in to try to minimize or reduce hate. They're inspiring. Overall, it's clear that every religious institution and related institutions can use their influence to bring awareness of and help reduce hate incidents, as our speakers today demonstrated. The comments of today's speakers are timely and join a chorus of insights shared by other industry leaders seeking, as we do, to reduce the escalating incidents of hate. We all must pool our talents, our resources, our audiences to turn the tide on hate. Failure is not an option. To our media friends, we will be emailing you a link of today's program as well as resources related to the program. You can also find valuable information on our website, actagainst.hate.org. We hope today's program provided useful data or fresh information you can share with your various audiences. This program was made possible with grant funding from the California State Library's Stop the Hate program. Please note that with 5 Wednesdays in May, next month's meeting will be moved back a week to the 3rd Wednesday, or May 17th at 11 a.m. And I apologize if this is an inconvenience for anybody. Thank you all for attending. That concludes today's program. So thank you again, everybody.